Okay, so this video, a little short, it's just dealing with the overview of using this Boxee rig. Now in class we've done kind of a simplified version, and in that setup, because we just had a few controls and I wanted all the students to get used to it, we didn't worry about hiding certain features, we didn't worry about centralizing the controls that we're going to use. This character has a few more, it has an eyeball, right, that we didn't have in the other one. It has a middle rotate control, and it's going to have twists and things like that in there that we haven't been dealing with. So there's a little complexity here. I want to be able to hide that stuff, and this is the way this would work in any kind of production environment, where you want to make sure that the animator, as the character technical director in this case, I want to make sure that the animator or animators, all of you in my class, only are able to select the pieces that you need for the animation. Right? I don't need you to be able to tap into anything else. There's just a few things, and they'll have all the controls, so you don't accidentally basically dislocate the body from the rigging deformers and those kind of things. So the first part of this would be hiding this in the layer. So in the layers palette, I have a stage, the controllers, and the Boxee body parts. And to keep me from selecting, seeing all those within the object manager here, I can just hide those from the manager. I could even hide the stage if I want to, right? So I only have the control set up here. But I'll leave the stage there just so you have a sense of it. We have a camera. Maybe you can move around later on if you want to try that out. So the other thing I wanted to note back actually in here was that I ended up putting, and I think I showed this in class. Let's go to attributes. I did end up, if I right-click, programming tags interaction, and on that tag, I included the disable viewport selection. So I can't select the body. You can see I'm trying to select, I have the live selection tool. I'm trying to select these pieces. They're just not highlighting. I'm not selecting the floor. Again, it has that interaction tag. I can't select that little, I put this little triangle here just, it's kind of just aesthetic. So I know this is the forward direction of my character. But I can select the curve that's down here. I can select this one that's around the middle, and I can select this one that's the eye target that I'll show. One thing though that is a little annoying, because this is a hierarchy, is when I select the parent, all the children parts are kind of sub-selected, and it highlights, and then you can see all this wireframe on here that makes it a little distracting, right, as you're trying to animate. So every program has its little ins and outs about how you would turn something like this on and off. I'm going to go, actually, this is in the preferences. And if we go to, within the preferences, the viewport display, under the object selection, when it's selected, it says, hey, show the outlines, show the wireframe, and then also include the children in this selection. So I'm going to turn that off. So even though there's a little orange line that's around the boundary, like the outside of my object. Oops, let's select that. You can see that it's highlighted just a little bit. I don't see all the wireframe, and it's clearly what I want, right? So I can see my character, I can see the eyeball clearly, so that I can animate that. Okay, so again, preferences for all of Cinema 4D, and I clicked on the viewport display and turned off include children. Just in case you do like having that feature later on so you can see a hierarchy, you can toggle that on and off. Okay. Let's go back down to the layer again, and let's hide the body parts, right? I don't want to see that. I just want to see the main controllers, right, that I've set up. And I'm actually going to work on this backwards. So let's look at the eye aim target. Right? So you can see I'm just kind of moving this around, right? My eye is looking at it. So this is how I'm going to, make my character look in a direction if that's what I need to do for my my animation. you will notice on this curve that I've placed here, if I look at the coordinates, I did freeze transformation. So when you're animating it and you would want to get it back to that home position, like where the eyes look just straight ahead, if you type in 000, you know what, let's delete the animation track that was on there. Okay. If you need to, you can just 000 command or type that in there to place that. Right, so let's go to the rotate controller. And this one is so that when the character, like if your character was jumping and was in the air and wanted to do a flip, right, it would do it. Now, obviously this isn't a good place to do it, but if the character were up off the ground, right, you do not want to animate from the bottom, right? This would look weird. What you want to be able to do is rotate from its center point, right? Poor Boxee's gonna fall on his head. So let's put that back down there. So the middle controller is only for rotating Boxee. You certainly could rotate it this way, but the main controller also allows you to rotate. I just would probably, I've left it just in case, like if you need to tilt it or do some things, and there might be some reasons to do that, but for the most part, don't animate this other than in along the y-axis, right, which would be the heading. Depends on, sorry, that's what H is for. Okay. But the Y, the green colored handle on the rotate axis. Okay. The other thing you'll notice is I put a protection tag on here. So I've locked scaling and position because I don't want this to move. I don't want this to move. You can see it's kind of grayed out, right? So if I try to move the rotate, I don't want the rotate to go anywhere. I want it to be right at the center of Boxee so that I can use it in that manner. Okay, so and then let's go to the root controller, which is down here at the bottom. So the root controller, I can move as we've been doing right before we looked at this in class. You know, I might want to rotate it and then use move and move my character off this way, right? So if I look at the root controller, all this is just going to be underneath the coordinates, right? X, Y, and Z, we can rotate it, and we could also scale it. So if I wanted to have a little box, I haven't done this before, there we go. I was curious how this would work, but all of this seems to be working correctly across the deformers and everything. So if you want to make your character bigger or smaller, I probably wouldn't stretch it. I wouldn't do anything like this, right? So whatever size you might want it to be, make sure that all three of these are the same, so it's uniform as we're doing that. Okay, so the, and then of course I've mentioned the rotation. All right, so we have the coordinates and then the object. Then we get to user data. So we have not looked at this before, and this is more high level, but it's really pretty easy to do in Cinema 4D. But this is more the rigging side of this. So if I select the character, instead of you having to go down in the hierarchy, right, because I don't want you to go looking for the bend or any of these other deformers, what I've done is created a user data element called bend. So if I wanted to add user data, I could say, hey, cool deform, right? Whatever the name of it is, and I would put it in here, and I would just tell it what kind of data. Float, it's not a scary thing, it just means a decimal point number, right? And whether or not I want to have this as some kind of slider, you know, that's in here, what its default value is, what its minimum and maximum is, right? So I just create this empty port for the controller to work. You don't have to do this, but I think it's helpful for you to understand, you know, that this is, it's very much about using characters and creating your own characters. You would want to have these controls that are convenient for you to access. So, so all I did is create one called bend, side to side, twist, blink, squash and stretch, and bend roll. So most of these, like we have something called bend amount, I think, on the controller. And I just linked these two. I said, whatever this value is, so if this is 0, make the bend amount 0. So this is driving the deformer that we can't see, and then the deformer is obviously deforming the cube. So I can just come in here, right? And this works just as if I was using the bend deformer, but now it's all here in front of me, and the nice thing is I don't have to go looking for all the various controls, right? Right, so I can do some kind of pose in here, keyframing the character, right? So that's what this little circle is with an arrow. It's just showing that this is a driver for some attribute that's being driven. And that's actually the way this works, is a set key driver and a set key that's being driven in a channel. But all you need to know is if I'm animating the bulk of my character, I'm going to use the coordinates tab here, and I'm going to use the user data. Right? And so I'll just put the bend back at 0. Oops. And side to side was 0. Twist was 0. Blink, the default for it is 50%. Right? So the eye is 50% open. If I make this 0%, it's wide open, a little scared or frightened of its little world, right? And it's nice and sleepy as we get towards 100%. So 50 is the default of that attribute. Squash and stretch here, 100 is the setup. And bend roll is the degrees. So remember, the bend roll does not work unless there's actually some bend into it, right? Because it rotates from side to side. So it's like a little shoulder shrug. You have to be careful with this one when you have a lot of the other deformers turned on. But if you get used to this, this could be very effective, right? Even this, it's like he's counting or singing a song or something. All right, so 0. All right. So those are the 3 tools, right? So the root control has basically everything. The rotate is just for when the character's airborne. If and in this case, if we're going to have the character bounce, you might want to animate the rotate. Maybe when it does its bounce, it does a flip every time, as it's walking forward. And then obviously the eye target, pretty self-explanatory, right? If I want this to look over here, the target is within is within the hierarchy, so it's going to move along with the character as we animate. Just something to keep in mind. So again, that has its own set of coordinates, and it doesn't need to rotate or scale anywhere. Okay, 13 minutes overview of Boxee, little introduction to the idea of how this rigging stuff happens. But it should be ready for you to just start animating with. It is set up with Redshift materials. If you are using, of course, in this assignment, you're going to send it all to me, and I'm going to render it all in Redshift with everyone's work. But later on, if you want to use this for your big project and you're using the physical render, I have all the PBR materials. So you would just unhide the parts, and you would just drag and drop. So this is Redshift body, this is PBR body, so I would just drag this and put it on top of whatever tag, and it would rewrite it so that it would be set up with the PBR materials. There's a checkerboard for the floor down here, and a plane. This is the plane that's out here in the very background. Okay? All right, 14 minutes. I think that'll do it.